for his 30-hour visit, one which marks possibly his most globally watched India visit. Putin's first official visit to India since the Ukraine war began and after Trump unleashed the global tariff tyranny over Russian oil. For India, hosting Putin now signals a reaffirmation of its strategic autonomy. Despite measures imposed by the US linked to Moscow's oil, New Delhi continues to put its interests first, prioritizing energy affordability but also an independent world view. From Moscow's perspective, this visit reaffirms the notion that India is an equal, indispensable partner to Russia, even with Beijing in the picture. For New Delhi and Moscow alike, the stakes are high, but so is their shared history. As the world watches, could this Delhi rendezvous prove to be a defining moment in shaping the contours of geopolitics to come? At a time when global fault lines are being redrawn, this visit serves as a diplomatic message to the West. India will not be cowed down by sanctions or geopolitical coercion. Rather, it intends to chart an independent foreign policy, reinforcing its decades-old relationship with Russia while balancing ties with the West. If the suggestion was that India is walking a tightrope, the message from New Delhi at least is, we are free from any concern, we are friends to all, enemies to none. Take it or leave it. That and more coming up with our special guest joining tonight. But here's why the West's dislike for Russia, for Vladimir Putin, doesn't quite trickle down in India. It doesn't translate the same way. This is the major reason why India and the West haven't been able to see eye to eye or haven't been on the same page as far as this relationship is concerned, because the historical underpinning of India-Russia relation runs deep. First and foremost, India and Russia share deep trust. India views USSR as a crisis-time ally from 1971 war to UNSC vetoes on Kashmir resolution, while the West remembers USSR as a Cold War enemy. Moreover, unlike the West, Russia has never sanctioned or pressurized or lectured India, and this is important for India and given its non-aligned stance. Over decades, Russia has supplied reliable, affordable weapons when others refuse, and that continues to be the case. While the West sees Russia through a democracy-autocracy binary, India sees it through strategic, not ideological lens. Furthermore, from entertainment to education, India and Russia share deep cultural ties. This very soft power legacy shapes how India and Indians perceive Russia with more warmth and actually not the hostility that the West may have towards Putin today or from the past as well. In fact, apart from arms and trade, this cultural tie is about so much more. From Russia's love for Indian movies to scholarships and tourism, plenty of factors have helped the two nations maintain strong relations. Indian movies have been a part of Russian culture for over 70 years, surviving wars, political changes, even the rise of Hollywood. The love for Indian movies in Russia goes back to the 1950s, from Raj Kapoor's Avara to Mithun Chakrabarti's Disco Dancer, which became the most successful film at the box office in 1984. Another reason why India and Russia cultural ties are so strong is the student exchange. Remember, Jawaharlal Nehru Cultural Center was established in 1989 in Moscow and has been mandated with the task of maintaining India's cultural relations with Russia. About 20 Russian institutions regularly teach Hindi to 1,500 students in Russia. Apart from Hindi, languages such as Tamil, Marathi, Gujarati, Bengali, Urdu, Sanskrit and Pali are all taught in Russian institutions. Furthermore, there is general interest amongst Russians in Indian dance, music, yoga and Ayurveda. According to India's Ministry of External Affairs, the number of Indian students in Russia has increased over the years. It now stands at over 31,000 as of 2024. On the other hand, India offers a wide range of scholarships to Russian students. The Indian Council for Cultural Relations offers 4 types of scholarships to Russian students. And let's not forget, Russian literature is still taught in Indian universities with dedicated Russian studies departments. In fact, the works of renowned Russian authors like Dostoevsky, Leo Tolstoy and Anton Chekhov have all been widely read, even adapted in India. This is why possibly the hate that the West may have for Russia and Putin doesn't translate in India. And the big debate that's coming up today, even as India rolls out this red carpet for Putin, the Prime Minister himself is expected to receive him at the airport. Is this not a strategic message to the West as clear as it can get?
The energy cooperation, because of the US sanctions on Lukoil and Rosneft, there has been a dip in the imports of Russian energy to India. Perhaps both leaders could also be speaking about exploring more routes to continue this cooperation.
Defense Minister Rajnath Singh held a bilateral meeting with his Russian counterpart at the Manekshaw Center. This will be a key moment for formal discussion on future defense cooperation, including S-400 follow-on units and potential procurement of the S-500 and also Su-57.
Vladimir Putin refers to Prime Minister Narendra Modi as my dear friend.
Yeah.
And Modi has referred to Putin and Russia as an all-weather ally and a trusted friend as well.
All right, let's go across to some of our experts joining us. Pinak Ranjan Chakrabarti is former Indian ambassador to Bangladesh and former secretary of the MEA. I'll also be joined by Tatiana Kukhareva, who's a senior Russian journalist with us. Elena Chernova is head of Foreign Affairs, International Division, Association of Innovative Regions of Russia, also known as the AIRR. Pinak Ranjanji, I begin with you. The latest update that we have is, as some had expected, the Prime Minister is going to be going to the airport to receive, quote-unquote, his friend, longtime ally, Vladimir Putin. What message does this send? Because a lot of people, were worried that India is walking a tightrope. But in the kind of reception that India is planning, and with the PM being there at the airport, it seems like a message is not of a tightrope, but of a very clear stand from India that we are not afraid of the message that the West is receiving from this visit.
Well, firstly, let me add a personal thing that I have received President Putin when I was chief of protocol at least 3 times when I was in the ministry.
Right.
And I remember those occasions as well. And on some of them, the Prime Minister did go to receive President Putin. So I'm not surprised that the Prime Minister is going. This happens when you want to welcome a close friend. The Prime Minister, as we say, breaks protocol. Because the protocol is a template which is normally followed, but sometimes you don't follow it to express a special kind of a sort of a welcome, which is what I think Prime Minister will be. And I'm not surprised because he's done it before, and I think President Putin has been, this is I think I don't know which number visit this is, 11th visit I think, after we signed the special strategic agreement in 2000. So, but it's after 4 years. So naturally, this is a very memorable occasion. And given the international situation today, it becomes even more important that...
which is why I ask, PM going there, quote-unquote, breaking protocol again. From India, the message clearly is that, we are not so worried about what the West takes from this.
Look, I don't subscribe to that. We are not sending a message to anybody. We are building a stronger foundation to a very strong bilateral relationship that we have had with Russia for decades. I mean, this is not today's relationship, and hence we are only trying to rebuild or perhaps add more blocks to that relationship that we have had for many years. So I don't think we are trying to send a message. If anybody else wants to read a message, that's their business. Really.
That's their business.
And we are not really, concerned about that. We are building and sending a message to the 2 countries and the people of the 2 countries also that we remain steadfast friends.
Yes. No, but let me then come to the the crux of the issue here. Ruslan Botnik is international affairs expert joining us, I believe, from Kiev in Ukraine. Also, Tarak Arta, former director NSCS, is also with us. So, Ruslan, let me begin with you. Why is there a lack of understanding, or an insistence against India's special and long-standing relationship with Russia, regardless of the situation in Ukraine. Why is the West either failing to get it or refusing to accept it?
I think there is this very clear understanding what is going on, but the West and of course Ukraine are not ready to accept this Indian position as something true or something balanced and something leveraged. So because the formal, the public demonstration of this absence of understanding, it's methods of influence, I think, for Indian position. I'm not fully agree with my previous colleague. I think this meeting with airport is a signal for the West, especially for United States, that India's side is not only ashamed by the Putin, but also making his independent policy positioning towards the United States, especially policy, because the United States imposed the tariffs, trade tariffs to India because of cooperation with Russia. And now Indian Prime Minister is meeting Putin in so wide circumstances. It's a signal to the West, to the United States, that India is not going to be defeated, and India is not going to making some back steps even under the pressure from the West.
No, which is exactly why it seems like the West's insistence, as you put it, Raslan, to not accept the Indian position, it's only self-defeatist. It's also, kind of souring the relationship, which was a burgeoning relationship between India and US and Europe, for example. But before I come to that, let me also go across to Tatiana, because, to expect that India would completely upend its friendship and a time-tested friendship with Russia, just because international situation has changed because of this war, was always an irrational demand. And the West doesn't seem to get it.
Well, Shivani, I can't quite agree with you in terms of it being an irrational demand on the part of the West, because that would essentially mean that the West is ready to live in a non-Western dominated world.
Right.
It hasn't been. The playbook has changed, but to expect for any US president, we talk a lot about Donald Trump being irrational or being this and that, which in fact he's not. He's just much more straightforward than, his Democratic predecessor. To expect from any American president to willingly accept the fact that it's not an American-dominated world anymore, and to accept India as an equal kind of partner, and accept the fact that there are countries, and not just India. I mean, look at the Gulf region. The countries that are very, very straightforward about the fact that they want sovereignty. They want geopolitical sovereignty. They want, and they have every right to be at the table, at a round table. Not at the table where the US is at the head of the table and dictating terms. The whole narrative of it being a message to the West suggests the fact that India needs to send some sort of a message. Even that in itself, in the root, kind of means that there is a message to be sent, because they need to show something to the US and the West.
No, I get where you're coming from, but it is only realism that there was indeed a lot of pressure on India. You are aware of it. All of us here are aware of it, of the kind of pressure India has faced. And many expected it to buckle down because India has its own needs. It needs the US and the West as well. It cannot completely, disregard their sentiments or their concerns. But there was an expectation that India would buckle down. And I think the message from India clearly is that we haven't in the past, we're not going to in the future.
Oh, absolutely. But it's a very clear, very simple explanation, because there was pressure all around. And, because simply put, because Europe had, because Europe did kind of crumble under that pressure.
Exactly.
And but again, can we really compare countries like India to, say, Britain? Can we really compare the European struggling economies, and they are struggling. I mean, we need to face the facts. Again, the economic flagship of Europe, kind of the driver of economy in Europe, which used to be Germany, has been in economic decline for over 2 years now. And there we have India that has been growing. I mean, we need to redefine the playbook on an international level, because even the suggestion, that we have the developed countries and then we have developing countries.
Yeah. No, fair enough.
The rules have changed, though.
No, absolutely, Tarakarta. Of course, Tatiana is right in that. I mean, that indeed is the message that India is sending, right? That the West is not in the position to dictate terms to anybody anymore. Yes, India has its concerns and its needs and requirements. But one, we've never done diplomacy like this. And secondly, we're not going to start now when we're vying to become a $5 trillion economy. Ma'am, I think, yes, go ahead.
I think I would go with what Ambassador said. See, both leaders are very similar in this, in terms of having a very personal relationship. They see things through that lens. And Prime Minister Modi and Mr. Putin are known to have a very good relationship. This Prime Minister, I've been in his administration, he doesn't stand on protocol. When he wants to do something, he'll do it. So there's also a personal thing involved. The fact, finally, it remains that the US is your largest trading partner. I mean, we've got the most vibrant trade relationship with the US. That is not so with regard to Russia. Let's face facts. So it's not so much sending a message, but also an acknowledgement that Russia has stood by us even recently. You remember when that Article 370, China tried their best to put it on the UN table and Russia blocked it. We've supported Russia. I mean, this is something we've done for years. It comes very naturally to the Indian establishment to back Russia because we really have nothing against each other. This is one of those rare relationships where you're not competing with each other at all. You, in fact, sort of support each other at various times. So in that kind of a relationship where there's a degree of comfort, I'm not saying everything is hunky-dory, it's not. There is a degree of comfort with each other, which is why we've also gone in for this, we can come to that later, this logistics agreement. That's the next step. So it makes a lot of sense.
So are you suggesting, Tarakarta, that in that sense there is absolutely no trepidation, if that may be a strong word, in the Indian system, that there is going to be possibly more hit back from US or the West because of this visit?
Oh, I think there's a very clear-eyed realism that if you go in for any major defense deals, there will be a blowback. There's no two ways on that. Energy, we've already cut down. It's already gone down by, I think, about 30%, the kind of energy we've been taking from Russia. But all of this comes back to the point which Prime Minister has been making, that it is in our interests that the Ukraine war has to end. If that ends, then we can go forward with so many things. I mean, there's, apart from the very moral aspect of the thing that Ukraine needs a break. I mean, come on, enough is enough. Right? So, apart from that, the fact is our own interests are affected by the war.
Okay. So I'll come back to what could be the consequences of what happens and what is likely to happen, not likely to happen during this visit. But Elena, I want you to come into this conversation. According to you, what do you think is the message that India is sending?
Speaking on today's official visit of Russian delegation and its level, including ministers, head of government cooperation, heads of Russian banks, we expect about 10 intergovernmental agreements and more than 15 contracts to be signed. And it's a strong signal to other world that we have our private interests in such spheres as high tech, like nuclear technologies, aerospace, payments, agri-technologies, biosafety, which shows that we don't need any yes from the rest of the world. As Russia and India had a trade volume over $70 billion, and it's exceeding, and we expect it to be more than $100 billion by 2030. So we have a very strong ties, not historically, but also in education, in high tech, in culture. It's a strong ties between our leaders, and we don't need any signal from the Western countries to straightforward in our contacts.
I want to go back across to Ruslan as well. Do you think that this realization has set in that, you know, the strategy of trying to publicly bully India is not going to work? You're going to have to work behind the scenes with India if you want to express your concerns and have them on the table. But the manner in which, for example, it was done recently, that certainly seems to have backfired. Do you think there's a sense in NATO countries about this?
Maybe, but I think we are still waiting some kind of political apologies from India in the West. What do I mean? What am I mean? I mean that India, every time after such steps, after the meetings with Russia, with some agreements with Russia, India is trying to strengthen the connection with the West. So after this visit, I'm sure that Indian government will try to make some maybe calls or plan some visits to the West, and even maybe some additional connections with Ukraine. It was so after the last visit of India's prime minister to Russia, as you remember, then was visit to Ukraine. India is trying to leverage it to balance in geopolitical arena, because India is a really non-alignment state which is providing its own independence international policy. But you are right, absolutely, that this old strategy of post-colonial strategy, when we have a very dominated power which is able to put any country in the world in a special position to blame it or to demand some kind of behavior. This time in the past, and now we are living in multipolar world when no one can really make a significant fatal pressure to anyone.
Exactly. And you know, Pinak Ranjanji, what happened because of, you know, the explosion in the style of functioning of the US administration with Trump coming to power and all of this tariff that was going on, his aides talking about India in a very demeaning manner, almost trying to bully us, you know. The problem that happened was that India was working towards a deeper strategic relationship with the US. I think that was the sense in New Delhi and the excitement in India that India and US are going to power through to a long-standing, very strategic relationship. But that public stance and posturing against India, it just completely spoiled the pitch.
Well, as I was saying, that the strategic autonomy means that we would like to build relations with everybody. And we were doing it with the US as well. And because India is not a country which will choose sides or will be allied with anybody in the traditional sense that the Americans accept alliance systems, etc. They call it the treaty alliance partner and things like that, or a non-NATO partner. So India was never in that position, but we have links, very strong links with all these countries. And there is no question that India is going to choose one or the other. We will build with everybody. That was the plan, and that's what India was doing. But as you said, this public, castigating of India, etc., and things like that, has backfired. And I think they should sit back and realize that this does not work with India. I have been through the nuclear negotiations, and I know how they tried to bully us, and it didn't work. So they should go back and read those files again as to what they tried and what didn't work. And maybe there is some other way of getting India to cooperate if they wish to change their policy. So I think this is a new kind of way that the American administration, led by Mr. Trump, is trying to test out a new kind of diplomacy. Call it what you like, disruptive diplomacy, guerrilla diplomacy, or all kinds of things can be, phraseology we can invent as diplomats. But the fact is, it's not going to work. Now, the question is, when will they realize? That's for them to realize, because if they wish India to go down on its knees, they are living in a cloud cuckoo land, is what I would say. We are willing to adjust. We are willing to adjust with everybody. That's not the point. But the point is, you don't tell us to kneel down and say, "Hey, look,
this is what you have to do." Exactly.
That this is what you have to do. That's not going to happen. I don't know why such experienced people in America, maybe they are not so experienced, because this is a brand new lot which has come and they have no idea, I think. I don't know whether any of them have handled foreign policy ever before. And I know many of them. I have a lot of American friends and diplomats who are my friends, and I talk to them. And they themselves tell me, we are quite mystified how they are carrying on with this kind of.
Yes. Can I coin my own term? I think it's the Jean-Claude Van Damme kind of a diplomacy.
Call it what you like.
Or Johnny Rambo kind of a diplomacy. You come in and you're going to shoot everybody, and everybody is going to die.
Shoot from the hip, yes.
All the bad guys will kneel in front of you. Tatiana, what do you think? How do we describe this diplomacy?
Well, obviously, there's one thing that you can't take away from Donald Trump. I think I even posted that somewhere, that, how he is extremely talented in being able to offend over 1 billion people, with one post.
Yes.
That is beyond me. That is truly a talent. But again, this is something that the president actually spoke about. Our president has spoke about that. That India has changed so much. It's taken. It's completely changed and come into its own, and not everybody kind of got the message. That there is a sense of kind of habit in talking down to countries that some Western states are just used to having them as, former colonies. And there is a sense that they have not yet quite fully understood that this era has passed. And just as you said in the package, before our panel, this is the foundation of this relationship, putting aside the fact that Vladimir Putin and Prime Minister Modi share almost 25 years of a personal relationship, that the first time they met was, in 2001, I believe, then, when Narendra Modi was the chief minister for Gujarat, right? But the fact that Russia was never a colonizer, it never spoke down to India, it was always a partner. So the difference in diplomacy is very, very clear. It was very, very clear from the very beginning. And we've come to a point of kind of no return. I mean, what Donald Trump does bluntly, Democrats do in a subtle manner, but they do it all the same.
Yeah, you're right. We don't really know what is a lesser evil sometimes, because people would argue that even a Democrat president would have tried to do exactly the same. Although under Biden, we did see the kind of bonhomie that we had never seen before as far as India-US relationship is concerned. Who knows? But certainly, and you talked about that one statement that upset 1 billion plus people, and that was the one on India-Pakistan ceasefire. And I think that one tweet has done so much damage to this relationship, and the insistence after that 20, 30 times. No Indian is ever going to agree on this, barring stray voices for political reasons. Every Indian is united as far as an India-Pakistan issue is concerned. But I believe we also have what is a flight path. All right, we'll go across to that in just a bit. But a reminder that the president is about to land in India minutes from now, shortly from now. And before I also go across to Elena one more time, Tatiana, very quickly, I wanted to get your understanding. You talked about that this is not the era where the West can dictate, but what PM Modi keeps saying is that it is also not an era for war. So what message on Ukraine do you think the Russian president would be expecting when he sits down with the Indian PM?
Look, I believe Ruslan actually mentioned this briefly, saying that that there was another proposal just rejected in Moscow, which is not the case. This meeting comes on the back of President Putin's meeting with Witkoff, and there is a negotiation ongoing. So we keep forgetting that part, that from the moment that Donald Trump actually rolled the red carpet for President Putin, which we also keep forgetting, we stigmatize something. We hear stigmatizing of Prime Minister Modi for coming to the airport because it's not apparently a good idea to have the Russian president in India. But we keep forgetting that there was an actual red carpet rolled out for him in Anchorage. I believe that this visit is not about Ukraine, plain and simple. And we need to understand that. There's a lot of economic cooperation, there's the nuclear power issue, and Russia has been at the head of nuclear technology around the world. This visit is about so much more
than just Ukraine. All right. Okay, I'll delve into this a little bit more. Let me just quickly take an update from my colleagues. Arun Dhata is joining us live from the Palam airport, where the president's plane is set to land. Siddhant Mishra is outside 7 LKM, the PM's residence, where there will be a private dinner and talks today. So Arun, coming to you first up, what's the latest happening around you?
Well, that's right. I'm right outside the Palam Technical Airport, and right behind me, if you can see, this is the gate the entry gate of the Palam Technical Airport, and this is the place, and in fact you can see this vehicle. In fact, it means that Prime Minister Modi is about to arrive here. You can see there is no traffic movement on that side near the gate. 2 minutes back there were vehicles which were in fact flying. Now it seems that everything is stopped, which means that any moment you can see Prime Minister Modi will be reaching here. Remember, Shivani, we've been talking about the welcome which Russian President Vladimir Putin is going to get here, because Prime Minister Modi himself is coming here. He's breaking all the protocol, and this happened very few occasions. Remember in 2015, 2017, 2020, and this year itself, there was Barack Obama in 2015, Sheikh Hasina 2017, Shinzo Abe in 2017, Donald Trump in 2020 in Ahmedabad, and in 2025, Sheikh Amir of Qatar. For all of them, Prime Minister Modi had come here and welcomed them. The personal touch was given, and this time around also Prime Minister Modi is coming here any moment from now. As you've been speaking about the landing of the flight of Russian president, that can also happen any moment from now, because Prime Minister Modi is also reaching here, and Putin's flight is also expected to land very shortly. Remember, 6:35 is the time when his flight is expected to land, and then straight away from here he will be heading to 7 LKM, which is the official residence.
We'll come back to you. About 7 minutes to go as far as the landing is concerned, and Siddhant is joining us at the Prime Minister's residence. Akansha Swaroop, my colleague, is also joining us for Bharat Mandapam. Siddhant, to you first. Preparations all set. What is expected as far as this meeting at the PM's residence today is concerned?
Well, Shivani, today's meeting is very, very significant because this meeting only takes place when a country has a very special and strategic partnership with the other country. In fact, if we talk about Prime Minister Modi, then he has hosted only selected leaders at 7 LKM. It was President Putin, then Joseph Biden, J.D. Vance, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, once again, he will be hosting President Putin at his official residence. This is also in reciprocity because last year when Prime Minister Modi visited Moscow, at that point President Putin hosted Prime Minister Modi at his private mansion. Both leaders spoke for about 2 hours, and this is in reciprocity, and this is the reason that from the airport President Putin will come straight to Prime Minister's residence, where both leaders will hold restrictive level talks. Perhaps we've been told that it will only be President Putin and Prime Minister Modi and the interpreters, nobody else. So it's an opportunity for both leaders to exchange perspectives on regional and global matters, also to discuss bilateral relationship, how to deepen the cooperation in the bilateral relationship when it comes to trade, defense, etc., etc. So today's meeting is very, very important, very, very significant, and this is happening ahead of 23rd India-Russia annual summit, which will take place tomorrow at Hyderabad House.
Yes, and what is expected at Bharat Mandapam? Let's take that to Akansha, who's joining us. Akansha, tell us more of what happens.
All right, so we are at Bharat Mandapam, and this is where the India-Russia Business Forum is happening. And today has been a very interesting day because there was a delegation headed from the Indian side by our Commerce Minister, Shri Piyush Goyal. On the other hand, you also had a delegation.
All right, Akansha, interrupting you for a brief moment. Prime Minister's carcade is visible. This is happening at the Palam Airport. So the Prime Minister's carcade has reached the Palam Airport. We're just about 4 minutes to go as far as the scheduled landing of the President's plane in Palam Airport is concerned. The Prime Minister has, as they say, broken protocol to receive his good friend Vladimir Putin at the airport. This is, of course, a gesture between two friends and two dignitaries as much as two nations and two states. So we're going to be getting more visuals from the Palam Airport again as well. Yes, Arun, any other updates? All right, we'll keep going back across to Arun in just a bit. Akansha, yes, you were saying something. All right. So the Prime Minister's carcade has reached. Arun is with us. Arun, we saw the Prime Minister's car reaching inside Palam Airport. So any minute now, we will be getting some visuals of the President's arrival.
Absolutely, absolutely. Inside the Palam Technical Airport, all the preparations are done. The entire airport is completely decked up. This is the grand welcome which Vladimir Putin is going to get. And we just saw the visuals. In fact, we are also playing those visuals right now. Prime Minister Modi's convoy has entered inside the Palam Technical Airport. And within few minutes from now, we are expecting that the flight of Vladimir Putin is also going to land in the Palam Technical Airport. And then, of course, as we've been discussing about this, that they will be straight away heading to 7 LKM. Remember, the distance from Palam Technical Airport to Prime Minister Modi's residence is barely 11 kilometers. So it will not take more than 15 minutes for both the leaders to reach there. And then, of course, at 7:30, the timing for the private dinner. But before that, of course, Shivani, we were discussing about the occasions when Prime Minister Modi, breaks the diplomatic protocol to welcome, a state head. We had seen earlier in 2015, starting with Barack Obama when he was the chief guest for the Republic Day. Then in 2017, Shinzo Abe and Sheikh Hasina. In 2020, it was Donald Trump in Ahmedabad when Prime Minister Modi reached at the airport. And this year itself, it was the Amir of Qatar when Prime Minister Modi was here. And today is again a day. And of course, Vladimir Putin is the one who's going to get that welcome by Prime Minister Modi himself. He'll of course be there at the airport when Putin will be coming down from his plane, and Prime Minister Modi will be there welcoming him, and then of course both the leaders. So these two, this visit of Putin is going to be very, very significant. Tomorrow's day, of course, is a jam-packed day for Vladimir Putin. He will be starting his tomorrow's day with a visit to Rajghat. Then, of course, the ceremonial welcome at the president's house, and then CEO level talks, and then the address to the CEOs, and then finally in the evening before he go back to Russia, there will be a banquet, presidential banquet for him. Shivani.
I want to go across to Sanjay Suri, my colleague, joining us from London as well. Sanjay, how is the Western media, the press, reporting, or the governments there reacting to the Russian president's visit?
Well, the Western media is necessarily hostile towards Putin and they view with suspicion anything Putin does. They have been supporting his isolation and, of course, supporting quite weakly and quite hopelessly. We've seen Putin going to the US, being welcomed by Trump in Alaska. He went to Beijing. He was welcomed there by Xi Jinping. Then now, of course, he's on his way to India and on his way to Delhi. He'll be in Delhi very shortly. So the Western media and Western governments, and by Western we mean actually particularly European and Western European rather than the US, are very keen on strong tactics against Putin, and they really want his isolation. So they have supported the sanctions against India over the oil issue. They would not like to see any communication or contact between India and Russia. We saw the three ambassadors write a letter to a local newspaper about Putin just a few days back. So they are viewing this with suspicion and a deal of hostility. There is, of course, a lot of indication that India and Russia will move forward together on many fronts: defense, the economy, the oil issue, even BRICS, of course, coming up next year with India, as Adit said. A lot of movement, a lot of progress expected, but the European media, the European governments are not quite welcoming that.
Yes, on expected lines, but of course, as we've been discussing, India is not seeming too fettered as far as that reaction is concerned. Whether it will elicit a bigger reaction post any announcements from this bilateral, that remains to be seen. Some of our experts seem to be suggesting that, for both India and Russia, this visit is not so much about the war and the shadow that it casts on this relationship, or for that matter on entire global politics right now. This is more about furthering our own interests, our bilateral interests in trade, tech, and also defense. But whether any major big ticket announcement will be made or not remains to be seen. There are certainly 10 pacts, 15 MOUs that are on the docket. But Pinak Ranjan continues to be with us. I wanted to understand from you too, of what message, if any, do you think PM Modi will be conveying on the Ukraine situation to President Vladimir Putin?
Well, I expect that in the one-to-one meeting and dinner, President Putin might be briefing Prime Minister Modi about the peace plan that is on the table. And a lot of that apparently is acceptable to Russia and to President Putin. But there may be some points that are not still being thrashed out. As you know, the American delegation was discussing this before Mr. Putin left for New Delhi. So that could be one factor. And the second would be, as we know from within the system, that if there are disagreements on one or two crucial things, they are bumped up to this level. And then the two leaders get together, they discuss it, and then they either reach an agreement or they say, okay, we will talk about it more later. That's the kind of thing that happens in these meetings. So there will be a very fixed kind of agenda in the sense that there will be other issues to be discussed. Both sides might raise various issues.
Visuals of a ceremonial kind of arrival for the Russian President Vladimir Putin. His flight is about to land, and very soon we will be getting visuals of his arrival. But what we can, of course, confirm to our viewers is that the Prime Minister is at Palam Airport. His carcade has reached a while ago, and he will be there on the tarmac welcoming Russian President Vladimir Putin. This is Putin's most watched, most globally watched, talked about visit to India. He has, of course, visited India multiple times in the past, almost a dozen times. But this is one that is not just being watched out closely for both of these countries, but also for the entire world. So far, there haven't been any, eyebrow-raising responses per se, but it is not left to anybody's imagination what the West, particularly NATO countries, have to say and feel about India's red carpet to Vladimir Putin. My colleague Siddhant also continues to be with us. Siddhant, very quickly, even as we wait for those first visuals of the visiting president's arrival, What has been the response that you've been getting in the diplomatic circles in New Delhi ahead of this visit?
Well, Shivani, whenever these two leaders meet, there is always chatter. There's always comments coming from the Western influencers, journalists, things like that. In fact, last time around, also when Prime Minister Modi was in Moscow, Western journalists wrote many articles, perhaps, exposing Russian invasion and writing against Russia, etc., etc. This time around, something very unusual happened, where three envoys, German ambassador, British High Commissioner, and French ambassador, wrote a piece on the Ukraine conflict and blamed Russia for it. They appreciated Prime Minister Modi's view, his efforts since the beginning of the war, but they criticized Russia, they blamed Russia for the conflict. Perhaps that piece has not been received well by the Indian government. In fact, sources in Ministry of External Affairs tell us that this is a very unusual practice. A country should not be advising the other country on how to keep relationship with the third country. So that was the message which was given by Ministry of External Affairs. In fact, Ministry has also taken note of that piece. In fact, the next day there was the piece in the newspaper from the Russian ambassador explaining the Russian reasons for launching this military operation in Ukraine.
Right.
So definitely, European world will be watching the developments very, very closely, Shivani. But also, given Prime Minister Modi's position from the very beginning, in 2022, he told President Putin that this is not an era of war. In fact, last year also, when Prime Minister was in Moscow, he told President Putin that children are
that
dying.
has been a consistent message as far as the Indian Prime Minister is concerned, and how much of that would be delivered this time around as well remains to be seen. And let me also go across to my colleague Akansha, because Akansha, while there is so much focus on the messaging that the Indian PM can do, the leaning, as they say, that the Indian PM can do on Vladimir Putin, the reality also is that these two countries have a lot to look forward to bilaterally, and that is also a focus during this visit.
Absolutely. There are two big bets right now, which is, of course, one of them being the defense partnership, the S-400s, the purchase of the Sukhoi 57, the fifth generation fighter jets. But having said that, that will also come with its own set of challenges. As I've been highlighting in 2018, when the first set of S-400s were purchased during the previous Trump administration, we were slapped with CAATSA sanctions, which are meant to particularly address any defense procurements from Russia. So that is one key concern which India will have to address if it orders a new squadron for S-400, or even say in terms of transfer of technology. Technology transfer is something which Russia specializes in, and that's not the case when we look towards defense assistance when it comes from Western nations. The other big bet, Shivani, let's not forget, is financial digital transactions. We are looking towards bringing the rupee and ruble only so that there are no third-party mediations happening. We are currently at the Bharat Mandapam, where the India-Russia Business Forum has been happening, and I can tell you from what the Russian delegation has had to say and what our Commerce Minister Shri Piyush Goyal have had to say, that we are diversifying this trade partnership, one that will not be hinging alone on just energy purchases, which oil trade particularly, which is going to dip down to its lowest in the last 3 to 4 years this December. It's going to now involve pharmaceuticals, it's going to involve fertilizers, automobile parts, and all of that is looking up. In fact, I have with me a very young Medansh, who's just 17 years old, and he's the youngest member of FICCI. Just to quickly have it from Medansh. Medansh, what is it that the youth of India and Russia can look towards now that President Putin's making that state visit?
I find it really motivating to see how Russia...
I also want to go across to my colleague Sanjay Suri, who continues to be with us. Sanjay, want to understand from you, because you've been following it since the very start of the Ukraine war. The high-pitched... All right. Let me go across to my colleague Arun Dhata first, because he's there at the Palam airport where all the action is right now. We have multiple sets of visuals, Arun, that have come in. The Prime Minister reaching. There is a ceremonial guard of honor of sorts that is being prepared on the tarmac. Tell us more of what's happening.
Well, that's right. That's right. We have earlier shown that Prime Minister Modi had entered the Palam Technical Airport, and in fact, he's inside. As we've been discussing about the preparations inside the airport, completely it is decked up to welcome the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Let me quickly show you a glimpse of the Palam Technical Airport gate. There you can see now. In fact, it seems that the traffic movement is going to be stopped in a short while from. This is the gate that you see. You will be getting in a short while from now the live visuals of both the leaders coming out. And interestingly, Shivani, we'll have to see whether
all right,
both
the Prime Minister is there on the tarmac. These are live visuals coming in. His car is there. The security is there. He's now waiting inside his vehicle as the Russian President Vladimir Putin's plane lands. We are being told that plane has landed. So both of them are going to be greeting each other very, very shortly. The Prime Minister is exiting his car. And could we see both of them riding to his residence together? I think that is something that could be looked forward to, because in the past, the ride that both Putin and Modi shared became the talk of the town. So could something that be repeated on the streets of New Delhi? We'll wait and see. But these are fresh visuals coming in of the Prime Minister waiting to embrace, I'm guessing, his friend Putin. There could very well be a hug on cards and maybe, who knows, a shared ride. But these are, of course, visuals that are going to be watched very closely across the world. India is not pulling any stops as far as the welcome for Vladimir Putin is concerned. It is unfettered and unconcerned of the global eye on this visit to India. Ceremonial red carpet that has been rolled out for Vladimir Putin. Lots on the agenda, but what is really center stage is the friendship that these two nations have. And that friendship is not going anywhere, pressure from the West or NATO or not. That is going to be the signaling that both of these leaders are going to be doing as Vladimir Putin lands in India for his 30-hour visit. We are being told he has landed. Prime Minister is walking towards a certain direction now. We'll try and get a more clearer visual of what is happening there, but it seems like there could be a meeting inside. Let's see. He's gone inside some building. We'll see exactly what happens. But what we're getting to know is that President Putin's plane has landed at Palam Airport for his visit. The Prime Minister is there at the airport, almost on the tarmac, to receive his friend. And we're waiting to see exactly what transpires between these two leaders. They're going to go straight, mind you, to Prime Minister's residence, 7 LKM. And they're going to have a very private conversation there just between the two leaders. And there's going to be a dinner for the visiting dignitary at the PM's residence before the ceremonial activities begin tomorrow and all of the bilateral work happens tomorrow. There's going to be a quiet, very private meeting between the two leaders this evening. Could they share a ride together? We'll wait and see. Those pictures went viral, mind you, when they were sitting in a car together last time around. And this would be a great photo op if it happens once again. But Prime Minister Narendra Modi being there in person at the airport to receive Vladimir Putin, that in itself is, as they say, quote-unquote, breaking protocol. This is not how it's supposed to be. But Prime Minister has done this in the past when he wants to signal not just India's interest in a particular country, but also his personal relationship with the very many dignitaries that he has gone to the airport for. It has happened not just in New Delhi, but even in other states, in Gujarat, for example. And Siddhant, my colleague, also is continuing to be with us. Siddhant, any moment now, any moment, I think we could get visuals of the two leaders meeting.
Well, that's right, Shivani. In fact, you were mentioning about Prime Minister, an expert in extending special gestures. And whenever these two leaders meet, President Putin and Prime Minister Modi, there is something very unexpected that will happen. The bonhomie embraces, the hugs between the two leaders. In fact, if we talk about the Tianjin summit, Shivani, the way President Putin and Prime Minister Modi went together to meet President Xi Jinping, and then all the three leaders, had brief conversation ahead of the plenary session. Then, as you rightly pointed out, right after the Tianjin summit, both Prime Minister Modi and President Putin drove in one car to the hotel for the bilateral talks. So this relationship, this bonhomie is very, very special. And also, Shivani, all this while, since the start of this conflict, many times President Putin has briefed Prime Minister Modi on Russia's position, on how Russia is going to pursue peace, the efforts Russia is giving for peace in Ukraine, etc., etc. So, there is definitely a comfort level between the two leaders. There is definitely a very good understanding between the two leaders, and this is the reason that last time around also when Prime Minister Modi visited Moscow, there was restrictive level talks between the two leaders. In fact, both leaders exchanged perspectives on Ukraine conflict. And also, Shivani, because of this comfort level only, Prime Minister Modi is the only world leader to be sitting next to President Putin and telling him, stop the war, children are dying. So this is exactly what Prime Minister Modi said when he visited Moscow last year in July. So that's the level of comfort, and Russia is always open to discuss anything related to Ukraine conflict or global scenarios with India. So, this to celebrate this bonhomie, to celebrate this relationship, this kinship, Prime Minister Modi has once again extended this special gesture of going to the airports by breaking all protocols and to receive his friend.
This is not the first time. This is not the first time, Siddhant. This is Anand here, and good evening to our viewers as we continue on into the right stand. Whether or not will these two leaders take the right stand in the interest of global peace, harmony, and of course the global south. More importantly, what will be the interest of Bharat and Russia? That's the big question, as Prime Minister Narendra Modi, like he did for the Saudi Arabia prince, like he did for Sheikh Hasina in the past, like he has done for special leaders, he has for Donald Trump. He has gone there to show to the world that Vladimir Putin and Bharat's equation with Russia is equally important for Bharat as compared to any of the other nations, be it in the friendly neighborhood or be it from the West. But this is a special gesture. Let's remember, Arun Dhanta is there at the airport. We also have Siddhant joining us right from outside 7 LKM, that's where they will actually make their way. We must remember at Tianjin, there was a very special gesture that was extended